As I was prepping for my day and just like preparing my mind and heart to enter the world, I had this epiphany as it relates to like what's been happening on YouTube for a decade or more in Black women empowerment spaces. And the epiphany that came to me is that those spaces, particularly Chrissy type channels, caused people to look at being darker skinned as a disability. And we know that even people who have disabilities don't want the language around their disabilities to make them feel othered. And in my opinion, that is the number one thing that a Chrissy type channel accomplished. It caused darker skinned women, as well as lighter skinned women, mixed women, biracial women who support upholding the beauty and acknowledging the beauty of darker skinned women and not feeding into colorism. It caused everybody to start thinking of darker skin, or even if it didn't cause them to, I think it caused them to start thinking of, I'm going to stand 10 toes down. I think it caused all of these women to think of darker skin as a disability, something that had to be like on eggshells around. And I don't think that was healthy for anyone involved, because if you grow up with Black people of all complexions around you, it's only the media that, well, let me not say that, because I know that depending on there's a generational gap. Older people do tend to be colorist. And unfortunately, like, even younger kids tend to be colorists. I can't tackle that. I don't know about that. But I do know this: it's taught behavior. If you're around Black people of different complexions who love you and you love, you're not looking at their skin thinking ugly. It's only exposure to something in the media or some unenlightened family member that starts to make you think of things differently. And you grow up, you know, moving through society, you're exposed to music and different things, but it's still a choice to be anti-colorist. I was anti-colorist in middle school, high school, before I even knew that it was a thing. Like, before I even had the language for it, having darker skinned relatives, I never thought it was okay to belittle or demean someone for that reason. And growing up and then finding Chrissy type channels definitely made it a thing. Like, oh, like, so you're viewed as least attractive. I'd never thought of that. Like, I never thought that alone could make you like be viewed as least attractive or less attractive. So I don't know. Like, I don't know exactly. I have ideas and solutions as it relates to how I personally think about things. I feel like there needs to be some sort of accountability from Black women empowerment spaces where they actually say, like, my content was counterproductive because I made you see yourself in a more negative light than the media ever could. I force fed you every single negative thought instead of upbuilding you. I definitely made it worse than it was, worse than it had to be. And I made people around you start to think of it differently as well. Because again, like, going back to black women empowerment spaces causing people to look at darker skinned as a disability, people with actual disabilities don't want to be othered. So this idea of taking a able-bodied person and then making them see themselves through the lens of people who don't get it, who don't understand, who are ignorant, and then that being the focal point of the content, it never made sense. It never made sense. That's my thought for today, but I do think it's a personal choice. Like, I do think that it's possible to be an unambiguous dark skinned woman in today's society and fully capitalize on everything that you personally have to offer. And I just feel like those spaces should have done a better job of highlighting that. Like, you are going to be received the way that you present yourself. So, how can it be that telling people all these negative things and building a paradigm that makes them feel othered and makes them feel disabled out the gate, how could that ever allow them to walk in society and garner the respect and appreciation and common decency that they deserve? Because even like as it relates to, black and white, because, in America, it always comes back to black and white. As a black girl from an urban setting, I have often been in white spaces where I knew that whatever they thought, I was like contradicting whatever their preconceived notions were about black womanhood. And just by existing, in my, the way that I carry myself, it would often incite some sort of negative response, because like, how dare you show up and not be the negative stereotype that I believe you all to be. And I think that darker skinned black women have to stop allowing themselves to feel othered. Just as a black person in a white space has to not allow themselves to feel othered, darker skinned women specifically have to do the internal work. If they have an issue with their complexion, they have to work on building their own paradigm around what they want to believe about themselves, even if it contradicts what they've been force fed by black women empowerment spaces. I do feel like it's really mental. It's really mental in terms of how you show up, and what you accept and what you allow and who you go around as well. And then also expectations. Like, I went to a PWI for undergrad, and once I saw like that monoracial black men often had a preference, which we learned that term from Chrissy, I didn't care where I fell on the spectrum in relation to being close to their preference. I just saw quickly that they had one, and I X'd them right on out, right on out at 18. I was like, oh, they don't seem to be rocking with monoracial black girls. Let me not pay any attention to them. And when I tell you, that allowed me to understand so much about, like, first of all, I was wrong, but also, like, it was a very healthy thing for me to decide to not, in the words of Crystal and Kerosene, allow myself to be around anything that isn't welcoming or celebratory about me. And I think instead of like trying to be accepted, I think we should reject things that reject us. Thanks for listening.